I caught it by accident. And no, it wasn't a text or a phone call or some sleazy photo on a locked phone screen. It was something much simpler. Something stupid, even. A smell. That's how this whole damn story starts. I got home late one Thursday. I'd been helping my brother replace a water heater, so I was covered in dust and old rusted water tank slime, and the only thing I could think about was a long, hot shower and maybe watching the game highlights before I passed out. Emily was already home. Her car was in the driveway, lights were on inside, and from the outside, everything looked perfectly normal, like it always had for the past 9 years. Nothing out of place. No alarms going off in my head. But the moment I walked through the door, something just hit me, not in a dramatic, Hollywood kind of way, but more like a tiny splinter under your fingernail that you can't ignore once you've noticed it. It was perfume. Not hers. Not the floral, safe scent she wore every day since I met her. This one was heavier, more expensive, like something you'd wear to seduce someone, not to attend a PDA meeting. The kind that lingers in the air like it owns the room. I stopped in the hallway, trying not to look suspicious, trying to convince myself that maybe it was something she'd sprayed from one of those free samples in magazines. But it wasn't. This scent was worn by someone who wanted to be smelled. Someone who wanted to be remembered. "Hey babe, I didn't hear you come in," she called from the kitchen, her voice a little too cheerful, like someone who just finished rehearsing their line. I remember thinking how perfectly timed that was, how she sounded exactly like someone trying to act normal. I made some stupid joke about drowning in hot water tanks and being owed a beer. She laughed, walked over, kissed me quickly on the cheek, too quickly, and backed away just as fast. That's when I noticed her shirt. Black, satin, something I hadn't seen in years. She only wore that on date nights. And tonight was definitely not a date night. "You look nice," I said, trying to play it cool, but my eyes didn't lie. They were already scanning the room without permission, noting the freshly vacuumed carpet, the wine glasses drying in the rack, and the faint thud of the dryer running in the basement. One wine glass had lipstick on it. Hers. The other one was spotless, no smudges, just water spots drying in the air. That's when I knew someone else had been here. Someone who didn't wear lipstick. And that damn scent was still hanging in the air, as if daring me to say something. She must have noticed me staring at the wine glass, because she suddenly turned to open the fridge and said, "Oh, I had a glass while I was folding laundry. Needed to relax a little." The line was too practiced, too clean. My brain was already pulling threads, and every one of them was starting to unravel. I didn't say anything that night. I sat at the kitchen table while she finished her fake normal routine, talking about some fundraiser at school, which students were driving her nuts, and how she thought we needed to replace the shower curtain. I nodded in all the right places, smiled when I was supposed to, even made a joke or two to keep the air from getting too stiff. But the whole time, I was running through the scenario in my head. Someone had been in my house. Someone had sat across from my wife, drinking wine. Someone left wearing that heavy-ass cologne that didn't belong in my home. And she was lying to my face like she'd been doing it for years. After she went to bed, I stayed downstairs, just sitting there, staring at the glass. It was such a small thing. But that glass was louder than any text, any phone call, any email. It screamed someone else was here. And my gut, which had been asleep for years, was wide awake now. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I checked the dryer. There was a man's sweatshirt in there. Not mine. Not my size. It was folded neatly with our towels, like it belonged here. I held it up, looked at the brand, some niche athletic label. That's when I realized the rules of my life had changed. I wasn't living in the safe, quiet routine I thought I was. Something had crept in when I wasn't paying attention. And it didn't belong here. The sweatshirt stayed in the drawer for 2 days. I didn't throw it away, didn't hide it, didn't confront her about it. I just left it there, sitting on top of the folded towels in the linen closet, waiting to see what she would do. And guess what? She never said a word about it. That's how I knew for sure that it wasn't a mistake, wasn't a forgotten belonging from a visiting cousin or some lame explanation like that. She knew it was there. She knew I would see it. And she said nothing. That silence said more than a confession ever could. I started watching her more closely after that. Not obsessively, just carefully. When she left for work, I checked the time. When she came home, I checked it again. I started counting how often she washed her hair, how many times she changed outfits before leaving the house, how long she took to respond when I asked where she'd been. It wasn't jealousy that fueled me. It was clarity. I was finally seeing things without making excuses for them. And what I saw didn't sit right. That Saturday, she left the house around 4 in the afternoon, Said she was going to meet a friend for a late lunch. When I asked who, she said Karen, a woman I'd met maybe twice. I nodded like I believed her, and then I waited exactly 20 minutes after she left before I grabbed my keys and followed. I didn't even have a plan. I just knew I had to see it for myself. Her lies had weight, but I needed a picture, something real. I drove in the direction she usually went when she visited her mother and watched for her car. 10 minutes in, I spotted it parked on the side of a smaller road, outside a residential building I didn't recognize. It wasn't a shopping center, no restaurants, no signs of anything that screamed friend meetup. It was just a 2-floor duplex with old paint and an overgrown hedge. Her car was the only one on that side of the street. I parked a little farther down and waited. It was boring, sitting there, watching nothing happen, but my stomach was tight the whole time. After about 15 minutes, the door to the building opened, and she stepped out. Not alone. There was a guy with her. Tall, shaved head, in a dark gray t-shirt and jeans, the kind of look that says, I don't care, but really, it's planned to seem effortless. They weren't holding hands or doing anything obvious, but it was the way she looked at him that stopped me. Smiling, talking closely, like she was trying to hear his every word even though he wasn't saying anything. When they got to her car, he leaned in, said something, and she laughed. It wasn't the laugh she used at home. It was quieter, more relaxed. He didn't kiss her, but she reached out and touched his arm before getting into the car. I sat there after she left, watching her drive off, not sure whether to scream or throw up. It wasn't what she did, it was what she didn't do. No guilt, no hesitation, just calm, casual deceit like it was part of her routine. That night, she came home with a bag from a department store and tossed it on the couch. Karen had to leave early, so I did a little shopping, she said, hanging her keys by the door and slipping off her shoes like nothing happened. I looked at her and nodded, not saying a word. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't trust myself to say what I really wanted to. She sat on the couch, started scrolling through her phone, then looked up and smiled. What? She asked. I wanted to ask her if she thought I was stupid, if she actually believed this whole act was working. But instead I said, nothing, just tired. The lie was mine now, too. I was part of the act, pretending not to know, pretending that everything in this house still worked the way it used to. It made me sick to my stomach, but I needed more. Seeing her with that guy wasn't enough. I needed to be sure. The next day, I took a different route. I waited until she went to bed, and then I went back to that duplex. I walked up the steps, knocked on the door like I belonged there. No answer at first. Then the door opened a crack, and there he was. The same guy. Same t-shirt, like he didn't even bother changing. He looked confused. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual. Is Emily here? He blinked. Who? I could tell he was trying to place the name. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just sex. She wasn't using her real name with him. She was here yesterday, I said, pushing a little. Long brown hair. Laughs like she's known you forever. His face changed. Not shock recognition. But he still didn't say anything. Just looked at me like he was trying to calculate what kind of trouble he was in. Look, man, I think you got the wrong person. I stared at him for a second, then nodded and turned around. I didn't get mad. Didn't threaten him. I didn't need to. The way he looked at me, the way he avoided saying her name, told me everything I needed. Back in the car, I sat there with the engine off, breathing through the silence. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't paranoid. I had seen it, heard it, felt it, and now I had to figure out what to do with it. I waited until the following Thursday. I could have done it earlier, but I needed to be calm. I needed to be able to sit across from her and look her in the eye without shaking, without snapping, without making it easy for her to twist anything I said into something that made me sound crazy. I rehearsed the questions in my head, not because I thought she'd confess, but because I needed to be able to guide her into a corner, one where her own answers wouldn't make sense anymore. That morning, she made pancakes like she always did when she felt guilty, as if breakfast could erase suspicion. She hummed while she cooked. I sat at the table, watched her move around the kitchen, flip pancakes, pour syrup into the ceramic bottle we never used unless company came over. She was dressed in jeans and a casual blouse like it was just another day. She didn't know that I had already been to the duplex again and had seen them together through the blinds. This time there was no doubt. She had kissed him, not the kind of kiss you give someone in a moment of weakness, but the kind that says you've done it before and you'll do it again. I let her sit down across from me, put the plate in front of me with 3 pancakes, 2 slices of bacon, and a smile. Everything okay? She asked like nothing in her life was unraveling. I picked up my fork, cut a piece of pancake, dipped it in syrup, chewed it like my mind wasn't running 1,000 miles an hour. I waited until she started eating before I spoke. I went by that place again, I said, my voice flat. She looked up, I shifting for just a second. What place? She asked, already playing dumb. The one on 10th and Keller. The duplex. I didn't blink. I didn't look away. I watched her face tighten just slightly around the eyes. You told me you were with Karen, I continued, keeping my tone even. But you were there. With him. She dropped her fork. It clanged against the plate, louder than it needed to be. She stared at me like she was trying to figure out if I was bluffing. I wasn't. You followed me? She asked, her voice sharp now, louder, because she needed to flip the power dynamic. That's what we're doing now? No, I said, still calm. I followed a lie. She didn't answer. She looked at her plate, then back at me, like she was still calculating. It's not what you think, she finally said, the weakest excuse anyone can offer, and she knew it. Then explain it, I said, pushing my plate aside. Tell me what I saw. She crossed her arms, leaned back, tried to look indignant. We're just talking. He's going through some stuff. It's nothing serious. You kissed him, I said. I saw it. Her eyes dropped for half a second, then came back up. It was a mistake. He kissed me. And you let him, I said, voice still low, controlled. And you've been letting him. This isn't new. She didn't deny it. Instead, she pushed her chair back, stood up, and walked to the sink. She turned the faucet on, let it run like she suddenly had to wash a dish that wasn't there. I waited. You've been distant for months, she finally said, not turning around. You work, you eat, you sleep. That's it. You don't talk to me. You don't touch me. You just exist. I stood up, walked to the counter, leaned against it. So you found someone else to do those things with? I didn't plan it, she said. It just happened. People don't trip and fall into affairs, I snapped, the first crack in my voice. You made choices. Repeatedly. She turned then, arms crossed again, defensive. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? That it was wrong? Fine. I'm sorry. It was wrong. But I felt alone, and he made me feel seen. Seen. I said. You live in my house, sleep in my bed, eat my food, wear the ring I bought you, and you want to talk about feeling seen? I don't want to fight, she said, suddenly tired. Can we talk about what this means for us? What this means, I said, stepping closer, is that I'm not interested in rebuilding something you already set fire to. I want the truth, all of it. Now. She didn't answer at first. Then, slowly, she said, it's been going on for about 3 months. I didn't expect it to. We were just talking, then one thing led to another. His sweatshirt was in our dryer, I said. How many times did you bring him here? She looked down, didn't answer. That was my answer. I walked out of the kitchen without another word. I went upstairs, grabbed the folder I had put together with the photos, the times, the addresses, and placed it on the dining table in front of her untouched pancakes. She didn't move. She just stood there, staring at it, knowing exactly what it was. I picked up my keys and left the house. Not slamming the door, not yelling, just walking away because staying in that room any longer felt like breathing in something rotten. I didn't go far after I left the house. I just drove to the park near the old school where we used to take Liam for soccer practice. I sat there in the car for a long time, engine off, watching people walk their dogs and jog like it was just another day. I had no idea what to do next, not because I didn't know what I wanted, but because I had to figure out how to do it without losing everything in the process. Revenge wasn't even the first thing on my mind, not right away. I was still trying to absorb the weight of what she had admitted and what she hadn't. But sitting there, letting that silence fill the space between what I used to believe and what I now knew, something shifted. I realized I couldn't let her walk away from this like it was just a mistake, something forgivable. She had crossed a line, and there was no way back from it, at least not for me. By the time I got home, it was late enough that the sun had gone down. The lights were off in the house, but I knew she was still awake. I opened the door slowly, walked in, and found her on the couch in the living room, blanket over her lap, TV on mute. She didn't look at me when I entered. I didn't say anything either. I just walked past her and went upstairs. In the bedroom, the bed was made. Everything looked untouched. I opened the closet and started packing. I didn't need much, just clothes, my laptop, a few important documents, and the charger for my phone. When I came back downstairs, she was still sitting in the same spot. Where are you going? She asked, finally looking up. To a hotel, I answered. not stopping to explain. For how long? As long as it takes. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She didn't ask me to stay. That silence was the final confirmation that whatever we had wasn't there anymore. Over the next few days, I started taking pieces of my life out of that house. I didn't do it all at once. That would have been too obvious. Instead, every time she went to work, I came back with boxes, quietly loading up my stuff, tools, old photo albums, the book she never touched, my dad's watch, the one I kept in the drawer by the nightstand. I made a list. Anything that mattered to me went into a box, and anything that was just decoration or shared memories that meant nothing anymore stayed. I left the wedding album on the shelf where it had always been, untouched and full of lies. Then I called my friend Matt. He's been through this before, twice actually. The first time was ugly, the second time was fast. He picked up after 2 rings. "You good?" he asked. "I need to borrow your garage for a few days." He didn't ask why. The key's under the mat. I spent the night in his guest room, eating takeout and barely talking. The next morning, I took the day off work and met with a lawyer. I didn't want to start the process blindly, not with kids, not with a shared mortgage, not when I knew she'd try to play nice in public to save her image. The lawyer was straightforward, didn't sugarcoat anything. He told me what documentation I needed, what steps to take, and how to protect myself. I handed over the folder of evidence I had gathered, and he didn't even flinch flipping through the photos. This was routine for him. "She doesn't know about this yet?" he asked. "No." "Keep it that way. Let her think you're undecided. It gives us leverage." That night, I sat in the car outside our house for a while before going in. I needed her to believe I was confused, maybe even thinking about working it out. I walked in like I'd just finished a long day and dropped my keys in the bowl near the door. "Hey," she said from the kitchen, trying to sound casual. "I made dinner." I looked at the table, saw 2 plates, a bottle of wine already opened, candles lit like this was some kind of anniversary. I didn't sit down. "You trying to fix this with chicken and Pinot?" She flinched slightly, then shrugged. "I just thought maybe we could talk." I didn't sit, didn't touch the food. "You think if we have a nice dinner, I'll forget what I saw? You think the lie gets smaller if we eat over it?" "I made a mistake, okay? I'm not defending it, but I'm still here. I'm trying." "You weren't trying when he was in our house." She looked away. "I'm not interested in reconciliation," I said. "I'm just here to get through the next few weeks without making it worse than it already is." "So what? We pretend for the kids?" "For now." She stood there for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I'm sorry. I know." And I walked past her, upstairs, to sleep in the guest room that would be mine until the paperwork was ready. I didn't look back. The days that followed moved in a strange rhythm. We still lived under the same roof, but nothing about it felt like living. It was more like existing in parallel. 2 people who used to share everything now reduced to short exchanges about groceries, the kids' schedules, or what time the lawn guy was coming. I didn't bring up the affair again, and she didn't try to explain any further. That silence between us wasn't peace, it was avoidance, and she treated it like a deal. As long as I didn't say anything, she pretended we were working through something. She started waking up earlier, making coffee before I came down, like it was some kind of olive branch. She even folded my laundry one afternoon and left it neatly stacked on the guest bed. I didn't say thank you, and she didn't ask why. When Liam and Nora came home from school, everything had to look normal. They're not young enough to miss the tension, but not old enough to understand it. Nora asked me if I was sleeping in the guest room because I snored again, and I just told her I had a lot of work to do and didn't want to keep anyone up. That lie stuck, and Emily didn't correct it. She let them think it was temporary, that Dad just needed space for a while. I didn't argue. I wasn't going to dump this on the kids before it was time. On the 3rd night, she tried to talk again. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, not thinking about anything in particular. She knocked lightly and opened the door before I answered. "You still hate me?" she asked, standing halfway inside like she wasn't sure she was allowed in. "I don't hate you," I said. "I just don't trust you." She nodded, stepped in anyway, sat on the chair near the window. She didn't speak for a while, just sat there, like being close to me might fix something by proximity. When she finally spoke, her voice was tired. "I don't know why I did it. I wasn't looking for anything. It just happened." "You already said that," I replied. "But things don't just happen. You invited it. You let it stay." "I know," she said. "I let it go too far. But I've been trying to find a way to fix things. I thought if I ended it, maybe I could work on us again. You ended it because I found out." She didn't argue. She couldn't. We both knew the timeline. She wasn't sorry until she got caught, and she wasn't leaving until I made the first move. That was the part that stung more than the affair itself. She would have kept going if I hadn't followed her. There was no guilt, no crisis of conscience, just management of risk. I don't want to throw everything away, she said after a while. We have a life. We have kids. We have history. We had a life, I corrected. We had history. What we have now is a wreck, and you're standing in the middle of it asking if I want to rebuild with the same person who lit the match. I know it's hard to see past it right now, she said, her voice shaking just enough to sound vulnerable but not broken. But we can go to counseling. We can take time. I'm willing to do the work if you are. I'm not interested in saving this, I said. Not because I enjoy punishing you, but because it's not worth saving. I can't look at you and forget what I know. I don't want to wake up every day wondering what's real and what's a lie. She went quiet, stood up, and walked toward the door. Before she stepped out, she turned and looked at me like she was trying to memorize the way I looked in that moment. You were a good husband, she said. Better than I deserved. I know. She left the room without another word. That night, I started moving more of my things into Matt's garage. I didn't want her to watch me do it, so I waited until she left for work. I cleared out my side of the closet, took my books from the shelf, packed my personal files, and left only the bare minimum in the guest room. I didn't take anything she had given me, not the framed photo from our honeymoon, not the coffee mug with our anniversary date, not the blanket she crocheted during her pregnancy. All of it stayed. I didn't want souvenirs. That evening, I asked her to sit down after dinner. The kids were upstairs, and the TV was off. I sat on the armrest of the couch, folder in hand, the one the lawyer had given me with the paperwork. Her eyes landed on it before I even said anything. I spoke to an attorney, I said. The paperwork is ready. I'm not rushing you. You can read through it, ask for what you need, get your own lawyer, whatever. But this is happening. She nodded slowly, didn't reach for the folder. What are we telling the kids? We'll talk to them together when it's final. Until then, we keep the routine as normal as possible. She swallowed hard. Okay. You can stay in the house. I'll find somewhere else. You don't have to. I want to. She didn't try to fight it. She didn't cry. Maybe she knew this was always going to be the end. Maybe she didn't have the energy to pretend anymore. Either way, the message was clear. The day we told the kids was the only time I hesitated. I sat on the edge of the couch that morning, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold, staring at the hallway where their footsteps would eventually come from. Emily was upstairs getting dressed, quiet, not saying anything to me since the night before when we agreed to do it that weekend. The plan was simple. We'd sit them down after breakfast, tell them it was mutual, that we'd grown apart, that we both wanted what was best for them and for ourselves. None of that was true, but we'd practice the lines the way people rehearse for a job interview, knowing what they say isn't the whole story but still needing it to sound right. When they came down, everything was quiet except for the sound of cereal boxes hitting the table. Liam had his headphones on around his neck, scrolling through his phone, and Nora was already pouring milk before she even sat. Emily looked at me across the kitchen and nodded once. That was my signal. I sat up straight, cleared my throat, and called their names. Can you guys put your phones away for a second? I asked. They looked up, confused, but did it. That was the hardest part, seeing how normal everything looked, knowing we were about to blow it all apart. There's something we need to talk about, I said. Emily stepped beside me, not touching me, not even pretending we were a team. Liam leaned back, arms crossed. Is this one of those weird family meetings where you try to get us to open up? No, I said, trying not to sound tense. It's about your mom and me. We've decided to separate. Nora blinked fast, looked at both of us like she was trying to catch a punchline. Wait, what? We've been having some problems, Emily said, keeping her voice soft. And we think this is the best decision for everyone. Liam frowned. Since when? It's been building for a while, I answered. We tried to work through it, but it's not getting better. We both agreed it's time. Neither of them said anything at first. Nora's eyes filled with tears, and she looked down at her bowl like it could give her an answer. Liam stood up suddenly and walked out of the room. We heard his door slam upstairs. I didn't go after him. Emily sat next to Nora and reached for her hand, which Nora didn't pull away from. I stayed standing. I couldn't sit anymore. My legs were tight with energy I didn't know what to do with. It's not your fault, Emily said, stroking her daughter's hair. We both love you. That doesn't change. Later that night, after the house was quiet again and the kids had gone to their rooms without saying much else, I stepped into the living room and found her sitting on the couch, legs curled up like she was waiting for me to join her. I didn't. I stayed near the doorway. This isn't going to get easier, I said. I know. We'll need to set a schedule, figure out how to handle the holidays, the school stuff, everything. I'll talk to my lawyer this week. Good. She stood up and walked toward me, not close enough to touch, but closer than I wanted her to be. I didn't want it to end like this. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. What she wanted no longer mattered to me. You hate me, she said, her voice almost a whisper. No, I don't hate you, I said. I just don't believe in you. She stood there for a second, then nodded and walked past me toward the stairs. I didn't watch her go. In the weeks that followed, things moved fast. Paperwork was signed. Arrangements were made. I found an apartment close enough to the kids that I could pick them up from school or drop by if they needed anything. I kept things simple. One bedroom, clean walls, nothing on the counters. I wasn't trying to rebuild a life yet. I was just trying to hold one together. Matt came over one night with a six-pack and some takeout. He dropped the food on the table, cracked a beer, and looked around the place. It's not bad, he said. Looks like a rental, though. That's what it is. You going to make it feel like home? Eventually. We ate without talking much. That's how he is. He doesn't pry, doesn't offer advice unless I ask for it. After dinner, I sat on the couch while he stood by the window. You miss her? He asked, not looking at me. No. He turned. Not even a little? I miss who I thought she was. But that version of her doesn't exist. He didn't say anything else, just nodded like that made sense, then tossed his empty bottle in the trash and said he'd be back next week with pizza instead of Chinese. That night, I sat alone, looking at the blank TV screen, not feeling angry anymore, not sad either. Just still. That's the part nobody talks about. Not the rage, not the heartbreak, but the quiet that comes after it. When you finally stop asking why and start asking what now. And that's where I am. Not broken, not whole. Just moving forward, one step at a time, away from what used to be mine.